Great to have you in the podcast. How are you today?
Thank you. No, I'm doing great. It's interesting times.
I always joke in the AI world, if you went off the grid for 2 days, you'd come back and need to do a bunch of research to catch up. It's insane, but it's
Yeah.
fun times that we're living in. This is your first time coming on the show, so what I really like to do is just give first time guests a quick opportunity to talk a little bit about their backgrounds, and then would love a quick overview story behind Gaia Dynamics and really what motivated you to want to build in this space.
Yeah, no, absolutely. My story is a little particular. I'm not the guy that you typically would think would be here. I'm not a computer scientist or an engineer. I started as a designer, and that's how life works. I guess it takes you in different directions. So this is my fourth company. I had two exits already, and a third one that's still in business. So it's been officially now. This is what I love doing. I guess you could say it's so official now. So we started Gaia Dynamics last year. I've been collaborating with Andrew Ng's AI fund, and if you don't know Andrew, he was the founder of Coursera, and he was the head of Google Brain. It's kind of one of the top minds in AI today in the world, and we had constantly looking for where else we could be using AI and leveraging AI to solve big problems. So when we were discussing it, we said, well, one of the areas where there's a lot of need and a lot of potential is cross-border regulation compliance, which sounds pretty boring to somebody that doesn't know what that is, uh, typically. But nowadays, with everything that's been happening out there with tariffs and whatnot, it all of a sudden became pretty popular, right? And now, you have my kids asking me about tariffs at the dinner table, which was very much not the case in the past. So that's how we started. My background is it's been more recently in definitely software as a entrepreneur. I founded a company called Contract Room, which was in the contract lifecycle management space. It got acquired by Mitratech a few years ago. So I still had at least one more in me and decided to give it a go last year.
I love it. It's there's a lot of things okay to unpack. I want to dig in, and then we can again, like I said, have a casual conversation. But I definitely wanted to get your take on some exciting things that have happened recently. So AI recently passed the customs broker exam with perfect accuracy. Right, this is a test for those that aren't familiar. Roughly 30% of humans pass. What was your reaction when you first heard something like that?
Well, I think we were aware, right, of the difficulty of the exam. Just so you know, I mean, this is an exam that people can take twice a year, only twice a year. And the passing rate in the last few years is being anywhere between 35-40% at the top. And, I think there was one of the exams that had maybe like a 4.5 or 4.9% passing rate. So it's a pretty tough one. And so when we saw the results from April of this year, just 30% passing rate, and then there was an article in the Wall Street Journal, from Esther Fong saying, how this is such a complicated thing. We said, we should put it to the test, right? And see, we said our AI is pretty good at classifying goods. Let's see if it's that good. So it was fantastic to see the AI or our AI to pass the test with such accuracy. It's just so you know, it's if you want to be a customs broker in the US, this is the exam that you need to pass. Otherwise, you cannot be licensed. So nowadays, the need for customs brokers, it's increased quite a bit because of all the changes and all the regulations, and especially with the current administration, it's been particularly challenging. So, that combination of having a big surge on the need and also a difficulty in getting people to pass the test was kind of, the genesis for it. So, yeah, it's very exciting to see our AI be able to pull it off. And it's just the beginning. That's there's a lot more complexity. And if you ask some brokers, there's been a lot of reactions, right? Of the brokers saying, "Well, it's not really that hard." You say, "Well, if it wasn't that hard, right? Why is it just if it's not that hard, why only 30% of the people pass it?" I think where they are really coming from is that typically the people taking the exam are younger. People are just getting involved in the customs brokerage space. And, the bigger, more complex, kind of hairy projects that they need to tackle end up being a lot more difficult than the exam does. Luckily, right, we're still hitting 97, 98% accuracy on everything else, not just what's in the test. So it's very exciting times for sure.
Well, I think it's relevant to bring this up too, right? I think it matters maybe more than ever before, especially when you look at tariff changes and just shifting regulations. These can
hmm
be overwhelming even for the experts, right? So
hmm
would love to hear how are businesses and workers kind of coping on the ground. I feel like we always hear in the news, we hear the headlines, right? But I'd love to hear, what are you hearing from people on the ground?
It's very hectic and it's very confusing these days. It's very chaotic. Just so people know, your listeners, anytime you're importing any product, any goods into any country in the world, it has to be classified. And classification essentially means that there is a coding system called the harmonized system that is part of the WTO. And, in the US, you have a 10-digit code that actually is the one that you use. When you're importing, let's say, a bicycle into the US, you don't call it a bicycle. It is an actual HTS code here in the US where that determines what tariffs you're going to have to pay and what are your duty rates and what are any other kind of regulations are going to be applicable to your goods coming into the country, right? So there are about 22,000 codes, and these are essentially to classify anything under the sun. So even products that didn't exist before, so that makes it pretty challenging, right? If you just are an entrepreneur and you just made up a new product that didn't exist before, then figuring out what's the right classification is tricky. Plus, then you may have like a t-shirt, right? And classifying a t-shirt, it could be, well, is it long sleeves? Is it for children? Is it for women? Is it for men? Is it this fabric or is this other fabric? And the differences could be pretty meaningful. Like you could have something that has duty rates at 15, 20%, and others that are free. So classifying them is pretty important. Now, with everything that's happened and so many changes in the tariffs, then companies and people on the ground are having to deal with different things. The first one is the level of scrutiny by CBP, the Customs and Border Protection Agency, has gone up like 620% in the last 7 years, right? So they are paying more attention now than ever, on whether people are doing things right. So that's one thing. And you have companies, figuring out, okay, now we need to classify and make sure that our classifications are right. And just to give you an idea, our customers and the people we talk to are either importing goods into the US, a lot of them for supply chain purposes. So if you think about, let's say, auto, a manufacturer, right? Or somebody who's building any sort of machines, although it's just a car, inside there might be thousands of parts that they have to import from many different places and whatever. So whenever, let's say, President Trump tweets, we're going to impose 25% tariffs on steel, derivatives coming from whatever countries, there's always somebody freaking out and saying, what is that going to mean to us? Right. So they're calling their people internally or calling, their customs workers or now logging into Gaia Dynamics to say, tell me, how many of our products actually fall within this category and what is our bottom line going to look like whenever these things actually end up getting enforced. You know what I mean? So it's that kind of thing that we're seeing out there, people coming with huge volumes of products to classify or to audit and not enough hands always to be able to pull it off.
And how important is speed? Like you said, if you see an announcement go up, if you're probably taking too long to decipher what that means and how that's going to impact things, that I mean, That can cost a lot of money. That can create a lot of headaches, right? So, how important is speed here?
Speed is essential. Keep in mind that, and it really depends on how organized the company is. But let's say average American company, responsible people that are doing things in advance. If you're shipping something to some country, and let's say you have something already kind of ready to go, and all of a sudden you hear that something is changing in the tires that could affect your bottom line, then you really, need to react very quickly. And just so you know, the consequences of getting these wrong can be pretty severe, right? Like basic stuff. If you misclassify something, right, you're gonna be either paying more than you're supposed to, in which case you're just wasting money, or you may be paying less than you are supposed to, and it's like paying less taxes than you're supposed to is never a good thing. So you're actually exposing yourself to sanctions and penalties and delays and other things like that. So yeah, time is of the essence. Now, when we're talking about time, just to give you an idea, a regular kind of human expert, right? A customs brokers, let's say, that is had, let's say, 3 to 5 years of experience classifying all sorts of different products, may take somewhere around 30 minutes on average to classify one product, right? And this is if it's not something totally unique that they haven't seen before. So we had recently a customer that came with a list of 30,000 parts. It's one of the largest automakers in the world, right? So 30,000 parts times 30 minutes per product. That is 180 business days for a team of 10 people, maybe at a $200 to $300 an hour rate. That becomes kind of a crazy number very, very quickly. Good news, again, is AI was able to bring that down from 30 minutes to about 8 seconds. So 180 days became one day, and the 10 people team for that period became just one person for one day.
You've already mentioned it a little bit, but I want to continue on these. Like, I think people love hearing these real use cases, right? And Gaia's role in all of this. So, how do you continue to help companies navigate? We'll call some of it chaos because some of it is chaos. More intelligently. You already told us a little bit, but is there anything that else you would like to share?
Yeah, so there are two main questions we're trying to answer here. And by the way, this is not a President Trump kind of thing. This
Yeah.
was very messy before too, right? So just to give you an idea on the numbers, there are 56 million cargo shipments coming in and out of the country every year, and it takes about 10 hours per shipment to deal with regulation compliance, right? So we are trying to answer two questions. Number one is, if I have a product made of these components, materials, or ingredients in this country of origin, and I'm moving it to this country of destination, what do I need to know? That's a big, hairy question to answer. It's classification. What are my duty rates? What regulations are applicable to my product? Are there any sanctions, restrictions, and so on? And question number two is, how do I make it better, right? So it's like when you go to a good accountant, is going to give you an exact number, how much you're going to have to pay in taxes this year. A great accountant is going to make it lower in next year, right? It's going to make you pay less. So it's really analyzing sourcing. If you're bringing stuff from China and now the tariffs went up like crazy, where else could you be bringing things from that are equivalent in value and have a lower tariff rate, and so on? What other things you could do from the product perspective, changes in material compositions and things like that to improve your situation?
Interesting. And would love your take too. I know this is hard to do and probably even more difficult to do with the speed at which the technology is progressing. But what does a customs operation look like in 5 years if AI like Gaia Dynamics continues to become mainstream?
Yeah, so in my opinion, I think it would be faster, more streamlined. I think brokers will have the opportunity to be more engaged in providing counsel and sort of suggestions on how to improve the conditions under which people are importing things and also exporting things into other countries, and not so much having to spend so many cycles in just researching things, right? I mean, part of the problem is even the way things are described. It's a little tricky. So if you just come to customs and say it's a shoe, they're going to say that's not good enough. What kind of shoe? What materials? Is it for children? Is it for women? Is it for men? So all those things, I think we're going to be improving to a point where they're going to be more efficient and just making sure that the friction at the border when bringing things into the country will be reduced. So I think the biggest part of this for me is what it does for small businesses, right? This is one of the biggest motivations for me. Like we talk about trade deficits, and really you hear mostly about what's coming into the country, not a lot about what else are we doing to help people export more. That's the other side of that balance. And there was a study by the US Chamber of Commerce that says that only 9% of small businesses in the US actually do any exports. And those who do are actually way more successful than those who don't, for obvious reasons. So when asked, the number one reason why they don't export or they don't export more is their inability to deal with regulation compliance. So I guess every morning I wake up and say, okay, what would happen if we're able to kind of reduce the friction, right? What kind of growth can we unleash, right? By letting people now, more people kind of have lower barriers of entry into a huge market and tap into that. So I think that's really where I see 5 years from now, potentially a lot more smaller businesses being able to do exports and to tap into the global economy in a better way.
As we start to close out here, would love kind of a quick tidbit from you, like for companies overwhelmed by trade compliance today, what's one thing they can do right now to get ahead?
Definitely technology, right? I think one important thing is this is, AI is not going to replace the humans, that are doing this work today. It's just going to make them faster, more efficient, and be able to do more with the resources they have today. So I think it's if you're not using technology, whether it's ours or someone else's, it doesn't matter, you are leaving a lot of time and money on the table. And so I think one of the biggest equalizers, one of the biggest things, especially with the chaotic nature of the situations right now out there, is you can navigate this way more efficiently and profitable than before. So I think it's probably the biggest differentiator right now out there for people in this business.
I love it. I want to thank you so much for joining me on the podcast here today. We'll put some links to Gaia Dynamics so people can learn more if they're interested after listening to the episode. But look forward to future conversations and wishing you and the team all the best of luck.
Yeah, thank you, Jared. Looking forward to it.